Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, fresh off of the practice field at TCO Performance Center, now back home in the studio with a bunch of new information on the Minnesota Vikings after we watched our second OTA practice of the year. And it didn't go quite as smoothly as the first OTA practice, and we'll of course, give all the caveats that have to go along with that. I also want to throw out there that there is a big storm that is going over my house right now. So hopefully the power doesn't go out. And if it does, Maggie Robinson is behind the scenes. She's going to have to jump in. But for now, let's talk some football. What I would love to hear from everybody is what's on your mind? What do you want to know about how the Vikings have looked in their first couple of OTA practices that have been open to the media? And how did defensive players look is going to be a little bit tougher than some offensive players, but we watched maybe 15 plays today, including some red zone stuff. So I'm excited to get into that with you guys and also answer all the questions that you have. I have two clips from our press conferences with Harrison Phillips and Justin Jefferson that really stood out to me. And then Maggie Robinson has gathered some very interesting OTA reports around the NFL that we're going to decide important or ridiculous. And Frank Ragnow of the Detroit Lions announced his retirement today, which was very shocking. So we'll also dive into that. So why don't we begin with just the big takeaway from JJ McCarthy today from OTA practice is, well, he can't throw in the wind, so he's a bust. No, I'm just kidding. But it was unbelievably windy out there today, which made judging the practice a little bit more challenging. But the biggest thing that I noticed today was that they were just a little bit farther behind from where they were the other day. And it was last Wednesday when we were in, and it was indoor practice. And I felt like when we saw practice last Wednesday, it moved pretty smoothly. JJ McCarthy was finding his reads fast and getting the ball out. Whereas today, it felt like they took another step with the complexity of the offense. And we saw a lot more hesitation from JJ McCarthy a couple of times where he would have been sacked, didn't get the ball out. He threw a bad interception to Isaiah Rodgers. And it just didn't have the same type of feel that it did before. But I think one of the most important things to keep in mind about McCarthy, other than the usual things we have to say about OTAs, like, hey, they're learning, they're coming along, is that he has Justin Jefferson by his side here. And I don't think that we have to praise a star player for showing up to OTAs. I mean, he certainly doesn't have to because he's Justin Jefferson. And in some previous years where he wasn't in OTAs, it was fine. He would show up at mandatory minicamp. They've got the whole training camp. It wasn't going to hurt them to not have Jefferson there. And especially when he was negotiating his contract, I would never advise any player go out on an OTA practice field and run 7-on-7s while you're negotiating a contract, because even if you turn an ankle or something, or you never know when a serious injury could happen. So that's always better. And that's what he did the last couple of years. But now that he's under contract and he is a leader of the team, you can see the chemistry starting to build with Justin Jefferson and JJ McCarthy, just on the basis of here's a play that doesn't quite work out. And they talk about it after, they have a conversation about it. And also Jefferson has such an air of confidence about him. He's done this with so many different quarterbacks at this point, where he has been wide receiver one for Nick Mullins, very briefly for Josh Dobbs, who tried to get Jefferson killed, for Kirk Cousins, for Sam Darnold, and now for JJ McCarthy. And Jefferson made a really good point today after practice that even when a practice is not going great, which I didn't think today's really did for McCarthy, that he still has a air about him of, I think he just described it as like he knows that he's the guy now and he's acting like he's the guy now, which is a really important thing confidence wise, because there are going to be a lot of bumps along the way. And we've seen other quarterbacks sometimes in the past, they get down on themselves, they get frustrated, they lose confidence, because this is not the easiest thing to learn an NFL offense, even if he knows a lot of the terminology, even if he knows in his head the footwork. When you actually drop back against Brian Flores' defense, against real defenders at high speeds, that's so much different than putting on a VR helmet and trying to watch what Sam Darnold saw and then, make that decision. So we saw a little bit of hesitation, a little bit of struggle today from McCarthy, but you never see that it carries over from drill to drill. You never see the confidence waver. And I thought it was important for him at the end of the practice when he was running drills in the red zone that he looked like he got a little bit of confidence back in that drill and got going. But when you have Justin Jefferson with you, there's just a different level of confidence that any quarterback should have because you have the best wide receiver in the NFL. So after practice, I asked Justin Jefferson about his own leadership role, because one thing I've noticed about Justin over the last couple of years is when the team very much belonged to Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson was a little bit more reserved, and sometimes he would show a little open frustration, which not much by NFL wide receiver standards, right? In comparison to some other guys maybe who played here recently who have been involved in boat incidents. We didn't see that a ton from Jefferson, but there was some growing up type of moments from him, starting as a superstar and being like a part of the machine of the Vikings, as opposed to you are the guy, you are the leader, you are who everybody is looking to. And now he has really taken that role. And I thought that last year, Jefferson did an excellent job at becoming that person. And we really saw it when he was frustrated at times as other teams would put 2 or 3 guys on him, and he would not outwardly show, no matter how frustrated he was getting when he wasn't getting the football. And then the next week he would take off. And really where I think he showed it, because you have to show it on the field as well as being vocal. And when everybody's looking to Jefferson, they need to hear from him sometimes, because I think everyone's going to follow the leader when it comes to the best player. But there were a few times last year where Jefferson maybe wasn't getting the ball like you'd think, say against Chicago, and he would lay a block to spring a run. Or there was a game, I think it might have been the other time they played Chicago, where it was a screen pass and he had to block somebody for Cam Akers to go in for a touchdown, and he had to really lay somebody out. And those are the types of things that show you the effort, the hustle that he's going to put in. And I think that's leadership as well as being more vocal. But since it was noticeable how much more he was putting that on his shoulders, I asked him what he learned from that experience, because this year it's going to be really important that, yes, JJ McCarthy is the guy, but everybody will be looking to Justin Jefferson. So here is what he had to say.
Last year you took on a bigger leadership role. I guess, what did you learn about yourself as a leader from last year that you can apply now?
That I actually can do it. That's everybody that knows me knows that, growing up I was a, more shy guy, more, leading by example than by my voice. So I just, had to learn just being vocal, learning that, I have some type of, what's the word? When people listen to me, influence. I have some type of influence on this team. So just, whenever I have some type of encouraging words or, just have that chance to bring up a team and to break us down, that all makes a difference. And even just being here makes a difference. So it just feels great to be around the team earlier than normal, and just carrying on that leadership.
Well, and like I said, I don't want to give too much credit out just for showing up at the voluntary workouts like you're supposed to do for Justin Jefferson. But at the same time, if he didn't, no one would really criticize him for it. And yet he decided to be here. And you can see that relationship starting to grow between Justin Jefferson and JJ McCarthy. And when it comes to the confidence of McCarthy, which I think is going to be very necessary for him on a day like tomorrow when they go back. We're not going to be there tomorrow. For OTAs, it's 1 day each week. And then minicamp, we're there for 3 days in a row. But when he goes back for tomorrow, looking for a better practice, that he does not get knocked off of his track to where he's going with this offense. And that was really impressive from him last year when he had some struggles in OTAs, that he just got better and better as it went along. And then by the time he was at training camp 2 or 3 weeks in, he looked like a starting quarterback. The other important part is, even as much as the offense was not a smooth operation today at OTAs, with all of the wind and like, look, this is the level of football we're going to get when we're talking about covering an OTA practice, with 40-mile-an-hour winds whipping all over the place. JJ McCarthy's football still cut through that wind. I mean, the questions about his arm strength that were when he was coming out, I think all that really proves is that all you can be in a scouting report is what you were in college, but it doesn't mean you're that forever when you're only 20 or 21 years old. Now, maybe somebody like Penix or Nix, maybe they'd be much more of who they were going to be when they came out. But even then, like, scouting reports in college don't necessarily have to be what you are in the NFL. The work you put in can change that. Now, natural arm strength, sure, but there's plenty of quarterbacks through the years who have learned to be technically more proficient. And I think about Joe Burrow in his first year. If you go back and look, there was a lot of criticism for Joe Burrow in his first year throwing the ball down the field. Now that seems laughable to talk about Joe Burrow and his deep ball because it's been so good and so effective. But he realized that it was not that effective in his first year and went back and learned how to better throw it. Even Sam Darnold is a great example of this, where Darnold early in his career did not have a lot of success throwing down the field. And last year was one of the best deep throwers in the league, because you can work on it and you can get better. And I think we've really seen JJ McCarthy get better in a few key areas. I mean, the velocity, I think it's been good since day one, but you could see it when it was cutting through the wind today. When you got wind in your face and you're still able to push the ball 40 yards downfield, I think the touch is getting better for JJ McCarthy. Even, just from last year at the beginning when we saw him, it was kind of all fastballs. It was too high, it was too low. And he has been much more consistently accurate. And even when you just watch somebody warm up, so they'll put a wide receiver way outside and they'll run a route down the sideline, and McCarthy's got to let it rip to them. Much more consistent in those warm-up throws, where it was hitting the ground a lot last year. And then more and more it started to gain for McCarthy for just more accurate and things like that. And I think that's the footwork coming together, the technique coming together, that a lot of, for those of you who are golfers, I golfed this morning, if you tell, got a little sun, and I'm still in my golf looking attire. But for those of you who are golfers, everybody knows somebody. Just for example, I have an uncle who is 5'3" and can hit a drive, and he's like 60 something and can hit drives farther than me. And I'm 6'1" and not 60 something years old. And the point is that he is an amazing golfer, and he is much more technically good at swinging a club than I am, so he can hit the ball farther. It's not that JJ McCarthy, I think when he was in college, wasn't strong enough to throw it really hard. And we saw that at the combine, he could throw it really hard. I think that he just had to work on the technical elements of pushing the ball down the field, which I think have looked really good in these OTA practices, and how he's throwing the football, how he looks physically, which to me is back to the same point, possibly even a little bigger than last year. And I didn't know if he was going to quickly be able to put the weight back on, start building the strength. What's my handicap? It's not great. Okay. I can play in the 80s, put it that way. I can play in the 80s most of the time, but the chipping and putting are just the problem. And just to tie that into JJ McCarthy, I think that is truly where he's going to have to continue to develop from what we see as a passer, is some of the underneath stuff. It's a little too much velo. It's a check down, or it's a quick little, drag route or something. You got to take a little off that and lead the guy, as opposed to whipping it in there full speed. And it was very clear today also the timing with matching up his footwork and some of the decisions of, you got to get it out 1, 2, 3, and then it's supposed to come out, or go to your check down. And there were just a couple times where it felt like he didn't see that in the same way he did the first week. That doesn't mean panic or anything. It means that the process is coming along the way it's supposed to. It's more important, I think, for us to see, as a guy comes off of an injury, that the physical traits are there. And the other thing is too, you guys know my philosophy in evaluating player press conferences and things people say, that everybody is usually going to be complimentary, when they do their press conferences, especially of QB1. It would be very shocking if any other player came to the podium and said, I don't know, guys, we might be in trouble here. So, but what I look for is the specifics. What do they say specifically? And does it match up with what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing and so forth? And then I think it validates the thought process. So Harrison Phillips, who had, if you want to go watch, a phenomenal press conference. I mean, energetic, excited about this new team, but great detail about how the players perceived the free agency and the new guys coming in. And that's over Vikings.com. They've got this whole press conference. It's definitely worth watching. Harrison Phillips was fantastic. At one point I said to him, I'm like, dude, you seem pretty jacked up about this team, because he really was that energetic. But Harrison Phillips gave some really great specifics about JJ McCarthy.
So, what stands out to you about being around JJ McCarthy this year?
Well, he's gotten jacked up. I don't know if you've seen a change in his demeanor, but I thought it was really cool for his growth. I've commented before about how he came to me the week after his injury to try to learn more about the defense, and he's pulled me at times. Hey, I saw you were in a 4-eye on this play, and you moved to a 2. What were you doing there? Why? How can I see a nickel if you're doing that? So asking those great questions. He's really stepped up in the personal power role where in the locker room, I'm constantly seeing him going to new guys, to new players, dapping each other up, sitting on the couches and just having conversation, where last year it was off to rehab, off to meetings. He understands that we have to build a family here, and that, you can't have unique results without unique relationships that we believe in. And then, man, he's got some confidence. And he reminds me of like Josh Allen when I was with him in Buffalo, coming into his own and understanding the power that he has to lead this organization.
When we talk about JJ McCarthy and the difference in his demeanor versus someone like Caleb Williams, and look, Caleb Williams could still be great, but it's noticeable that JJ McCarthy seems to have a very good understanding of what is on his shoulders. There are some players that I've seen come into the league in past years that are kind of, I don't want to say lackadaisical about it, but more just they don't get the gravity of the NFL. They don't get the gravity of the position. They think, well, I've always been the man. I'll just be the man again. And it's clear to me that JJ McCarthy has taken a very professional and well thought out approach to how he is acting as quarterback one. And that this whole, are you the franchise quarterback kind of thing? Is he actually QB1? Kevin O'Connell, tell us, which of course, obviously he is, and is taking every single first team rep, as you would expect. There's no competition here. But as soon as the Aaron Rodgers rumors were put to bed, for JJ McCarthy, it was, this is your franchise. And this is something that McCarthy has worked toward and wanted for a very, very long time. And I'll keep going back to when he said that he was in 5th grade and decided to edit his life to be the starting quarterback of a franchise like this. And he acts the part with that. He seems to understand that everyone will be looking to him, even if he is the youngest player, one of the youngest players on the team, that he has to lead in that way. And I think another thing is for JJ McCarthy, that his communication skills are really, really good. And we see that when he's at the podium. He didn't talk today. He's going to talk, I think, again next week, just about how minicamp went for him. But his communication skills are so strong that he seems to instantly connect. And Harrison Phillips confirming what you see already from the sideline. We're standing a little ways back. If you see the photos or the videos, we're standing a little ways back, but it's not hard to see how JJ McCarthy is communicating throughout the time he is at a practice. And that is really important, that connection with other players. And this is not disrespect to like Kirk Cousins, who was a really, really good NFL quarterback. And if JJ McCarthy is as good as Kirk Cousins with this roster, which I want to talk about in a minute too, with this roster, then they'll be really, really good, right? But I don't think that Kirk Cousins ever had this type of natural connects with people, relates to people. And I remember when Kirk, this is just to compare the two, when Kirk got to the Vikings, we had a press conference with him and he said something like, well, it was kind of, how are you taking over this team as a leader when they just went to the NFC Championship? And his answer was sort of, well, I'm not really. I mean, I'm kind of just trying to be a cog in the machine, and we've got a lot of leaders here and everything else. And I think with JJ McCarthy, it's my team. It's my franchise. Me and Justin Jefferson, me and Jordan Addison, me and TJ Hawkinson, Darisaw, Brian O'Neill, but it's him. He's the guy. And when you watch a practice, you have no questions about who is the guy, who is the franchise quarterback that's out there. Does that mean he's going to win the Super Bowl? I don't know. Like, I guess we'll find out, but that's a start. Like, he's got all the starting points here. And then we're going to follow the bumps in the road like today and how practice was maybe not the smoothest one I've ever seen. I don't want to overdo that because there were some completions. There was a nice throw in the end zone that I broke down with Dane Mizutani on our instant reaction pod. But just a thought kind of coming out of that. Some of you have asked me, by the way, I moved the microphone back to the right side, tried to fix the lighting a little bit behind me, but some of you asked, well, hey, why is it in front of the Vikings flag? Because there's all the flags behind me. It's because every time I'm talking, I throw up my right hand and then I would hit the microphone. So I'd move the microphone to the right side and get ready for me to smack it time and time again. So anyway, there's some thoughts about that. I also want to show you guys something that I came up with for the newsletter. That is purpleinsider.football. Feel free to go subscribe there if you get a chance. And sorry, my head's cut off in the corner, but I want to show you this chart that I made for an article that tracked all the playoff quarterbacks from last year in 3 different categories that are kind of catch-all categories. So expected points added / completion percentage over expected, which is a Ben Baldwin stat. He works for The Athletic. He's an analytics guy. And then the PFF rank and traditional quarterback rating. And so I went through, and my goal was in this article, purpleinsider.football, was to try to figure out how good JJ McCarthy has to be this year for the Vikings to make the playoffs. And the average of these 3 catch-all stats was the 13th best quarterback in expected points added and completion percentage over expected. PFF rank was so that was 13th, and then PFF rank was 11th, and quarterback rating was 10th. And if you put them all together, the average quarterback was 11th in these 3 catch-all type of categories. And then I charted each one and how many quarterbacks were above average, how many quarterbacks were in the middle that made the playoffs, and then how many quarterbacks were not that great. Another thing that I noticed was there was only 2 quarterbacks that ranked lower than 18th. So we have a pretty clear baseline there in these statistics. And what I came up with just in general from doing this little study was I tried to find, well, who was the 11th best quarterback in some of these statistics in previous years to try to get some comparisons. And what I came up with was a couple of interesting names that are the baseline for JJ McCarthy. That's not that he can't be better than this, but how good does he have to be for this Vikings team to make the playoffs? And I know every year is different, but just if we use that number, the 11th best quarterback in the league, who was it every year? So I went through and I found guys like Justin Herbert, who's pretty consistently been in that ballpark. Kirk Cousins, as you might expect in 2022, he was in that range, along with Ryan Tannehill when he played for the Titans and they won the conference. Also, Baker Mayfield kind of fell in that ballpark. Andy Dalton once upon a time. If the baseline is what Baker Mayfield has done the last couple years, or what Ryan Tannehill did for Tennessee, or Jimmy Garoppolo was another name that came up, that's where JJ McCarthy has to be in year 1, which I think with the team that they have is a pretty attainable area of just the NFL in general. And Brock Purdy's name also kind of comes to mind as well for what he did last year. If Brock Purdy was on this team last year, the current construction of this team, and it's Brock Purdy, they are deep in the playoffs, right? I mean, they were able to do that with Sam Darnold, and Brock Purdy, I think, is a better quarterback. So that's the baseline. Can he be as good as those guys? And with this caliber of roster around him, then you have a chance to legitimately compete for a Super Bowl in the NFC. In the AFC, the standard is a little bit different because you have Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes who can't all play for the Super Bowl at once. So that's only one side of the bracket, but that seems to be a very attainable type of comparison for McCarthy as a baseline for where he needs to get to go deep into the playoffs with this Vikings roster. So again, purpleinsider.football if you want to see that entire article. So questions, comments, thoughts, feelings. What do you guys want to know? Anything is on the table with the Vikings or the NFL, but if you have specific OTA questions, there are some other takeaways that I had that I shared on the podcast with Dane, but I'm happy to answer any questions for you. We'll start out. Hold on. Let me scroll back up. Nate says, if you could compare Ty Felton to any wide receiver, who would it be? I don't know that I have a comparison right off the top of my head yet, because all I've seen from him is running routes a little bit in 7-on-7s and then doing warm-up routes. It's kind of hard to formulate a comparison based on that, but you combine that with what he was able to do in college, I'm going to have to think a little bit about it, because Felton is tall and fast, but he's not ultra quick out of his breaks. So when I watch wide receivers and think about the guy that we used to have in front of us at practice, Stefon Diggs, no one was better than Stefon Diggs at getting in and out of his breaks. I've never seen anyone up close better in short area. If you're running, and I mean, in NFL history, I'm sure there are guys who are close, but in front of me at practice, doing like, just say an out route at 10 yards, how quick can you get from full speed straight to full speed going left? Stefon Diggs was unbelievable. And so I'm sure just you can all envision, having seen Diggs play for many years, what that looked like, that kind of chopping your feet, getting low, turning your hips, lightning quick, right? That's not Ty Felton yet. He is more straight up and down. And I think that there's more of a get there really fast straight, then turn, then go left, that he's going to have to work on. He's going to have to work on getting lower and breaking his feet down, chopping his feet in and out of those breaks, getting some of the route running details down, because the raw physical talent, size and speed, you just don't see that combination all that much. I think that early on, he's going to be a guy that you want to get the ball to pretty quickly, let him break some tackles, let him run after the catch. And then they're going to have to work on the other stuff as it goes along. And they're going to have to develop the other stuff, which is why you draft someone in the third round. I mean, if Ty Felton, who I think has a high ceiling and a lot of potential, but he hasn't played a ton of football. Last year was a breakout year for him, 96 catches in college, but he hasn't played a ton of football. It's not like he has 4 or 5 years of being the guy at Maryland. It was really only last year that he broke out. So there's details that he's going to have to learn on the fly as we go through training camp, next off season, all that. So my expectations for Felton for this year are not through the roof. I think that they can be as he gets more time and he's in a situation where he's going to be able to develop. But I'm trying to think of a good comparison. Who was the guy for the 49ers? How fast was that Jawan Jennings? How fast was he? Like a taller guy that could catch the ball really well, but maybe wasn't the most nimble when it came out of his breaks. That might be a little bit too deep on a roster. I can't think of a recent Viking wide receiver because they really haven't had guys other than great receivers. It's been, Diggs, Thielen, Addison, and Jefferson, and then a lot of, we'll see what happens with that guy. So, I think Felton has a lot of potential, and you don't see that size and speed. Marley suggests taller, faster, Jarius Wright. I don't see that. I think Jarius Wright was really good at getting out of his breaks. And if you're taller, then you're not like him. I mean, as far as the role goes, maybe because it's underneath stuff. But Jarius was really good at those slants, short area stuff, where I think Felton is going to be more get the ball into his hands, and then he'll have to develop as a route runner. I think he tracks the ball well, so he could be more of a straight line, deep threat. When was the last time the Vikings had a guy who just could line up and then just run by somebody on the outside? I don't know. I mean, Jefferson can obviously do it and does it well all the time, but how many guys are really, really good at that, that the Vikings have had? I mean, Naylor is a good deep threat, but I see him as good because he tracks the ball well and he has kind of long speed, they call it, guys who get seemingly faster as they go. But just stand there, snap is taken, fly by somebody like a track star. I don't know. I don't know how much that's been. So, I think that with Ty Felton, you're going to have some patience with him and allow him to grow into this role. And this year, it might only be a handful of catches for this year for Ty Felton. Maybe you see him in some kick returns, and there's going to have to be development along the way. Matt says, Ty reminds me of someone. I just haven't pegged who yet. He's physical, but fast. So I have to figure out who. Yeah, I'm having the same struggle. So I guess comps are fine. Be interested. Brings a great blend of speed, strength, and grit. Well, that's definitely true. Is he was able to break tackles, which is not something that's easy to do. Does Felton have a chance at wide receiver 3? I mean, if someone gets hurt, then the answer would be yes. But if nobody gets hurt, then no. Jalen Nailor is so much more experienced. He's been in this system. And let's not forget that every time Kevin O'Connell talks over the last 4 years, he's brought up Jalen Nailor, I feel like. I mean, he has always been on Jalen Nailor's side. And we saw last year some flashes of why he has liked Jalen Nailor so much. So Nailor's going to be that guy. But Nailor also is in line to get a contract extension or to get a contract somewhere else and hit free agency and be a big or decent sized money receiver like a Josh Palmer or something where he can get $10 million, $15 million elsewhere that the Vikings might not want to give him. So it kind of depends on how this year goes. Maybe he proves to be invaluable and they pay him anyway. But Felton's just, to me, watching just the warm-ups and seeing him next to Addison, seeing him next to Nailor, seeing him next to Jefferson, that's a guy who looks very similar to how KJ Osborne looked his first year, to how Jalen Nailor looked his first year, where the raw talent is clearly there. I think the want to with a guy like Felton is there, and he is fast, strong, big. Development is just going to happen. And we never want that. Like the draft happens, and we just want everybody to be, this happened with Dallas Turner last year, just everybody to be in their prime right away because you get so excited about the draft. But with him, it's probably next year we're going to see more out of him. That's just my read from OTAs right now. We could see fast development. It's just I think this team is in a position to let someone like Ty Felton develop. Deontay asks, Frank Ragnow retired today. How big of a loss is it for Detroit? Absolutely enormous. In fact, if you go back and listen to Harrison Phillips talk about Frank Ragnow, Harrison Phillips gave him an applause. Harrison Phillips was told that Ragnow retired, and he literally clapped and said, like, congratulations, that's an amazing career. He said that other centers on the Vikings team would be asking him, how does Frank do it? Like, what does he do that's so good? Said he was one of the hardest people in the league to play against. I mean, that's not something that you replace easily. Now, of course, I've seen, well, this is the end of the Detroit Lions. It's not. But Frank Ragnow is one of those players that you just don't go find. I mean, you have to usually get someone of that caliber in the first round, and then he grows into a superstar. I mean, I think centers are the position that probably the greatest players don't get enough unless your brother is dating Taylor Swift. Then you get a lot of attention. Not that Jason Kelce doesn't deserve it. He absolutely does. But Jason Kelce is the only center who I've ever seen that actually gets the love he deserves. Most great centers just kind of go about their business and don't end up in the spotlight in any way. And Ragnow was like that when you'd watch the game back and you're like, jeez. So I think that it could affect their running game and Jahmyr Gibbs. It could affect their pass protection, but I think their running game more than anything, that he was the head of the snake for that run game. And they also lost Kevin Zeitler. Like, that offensive line is where it all begins. And we know this for Jared Goff, that where did it start to go sideways from Jared Goff in Los Angeles, from having the number one offense in 2017, top 3, I think, in 2018. It started to go sideways when the Los Angeles Rams offensive line broke down. Because as much as Jared Goff, I think, is a great quarterback, top offenses every year. What has he beaten the Vikings 5 out of the last 6 times or something? I mean, he's really good, but he's not a mover. He's not a runner. He's not an escaper. He's got to have a good pocket. And from a clean pocket, he will light you up, but he's got to have a clean pocket. And losing Frank Ragnow is big, and they have a different offensive coordinator. I mean, I really think that this is going to be a tougher year for the Detroit Lions than it was last year. Adam says, question, a lot of people have been saying KOC will run more with the rookie quarterback. What do you think? KOC hasn't held any other quarterbacks back thus far. I doubt it a little. This is going to be, well, one thing about him not holding back other quarterbacks is that there is, or not leaning on a run game and putting it all on other quarterbacks. And there was the one game where he threw 30-something passes with Josh Dobbs despite 4 interceptions, and he still wouldn't run. And, that was a bad moment for KOC, I think. But as far as, and look, whatever happened with Josh Dobbs, it happened. But I think we saw then in that game that he's going to continue to push the pass button almost no matter what. And this is an offense that's going to be on the quarterback's shoulders. However, if we look at the last 3 years, they did not really trust Delvin Cook as he started to fade in the second half of 2022. They moved away from it, put everything on Kirk. They were also playing in a lot of games where they were losing at the end, had to come back, shootouts where they had to throw a ton. So that was going to impact it a lot, those statistics about the run-pass ratio. Then they go with the Alexander Mattison experiment, which I endorsed. I thought, let's find out if he can be a good running back. And the answer was no, not unless he's a backup and he's just filling in and you have a really good offensive line and that sort of stuff. Just he's more of a RB2 and not an RB1. So we learned that. And you could see why Kevin O'Connell would not have trusted that run game when it was just not succeeding very much with Alexander Mattison and the offensive line to some extent there. And then last year, early in the season, they were leaning on Aaron Jones a lot, and they were actually closer to 50-50. They were ahead in games. They were running more. In some moments, I criticized, and of course, I think O'Connell would probably look back and say, I shouldn't have been as aggressive at that point, even if he wants to be aggressive. But for the most part, they did run, and they ran effectively, and they were at 5 yards a carry midway through the season. I think when Darisaw got hurt, they were at 5 yards a carry, and they were the closest they'd ever been during O'Connell to a 50-50 ratio. The problem is after that, they swapped out Dalton Reisner for Ed Ingram, and they swapped out, not by their choice, Cam Robinson for Christian Darisaw. Cam Robinson is one of the worst run blocking linemen in the entire league. And guess what? So is Dalton Reisner. And so you ended up with really one well above average run blocker, and that was Brian O'Neill, and that was it. Now this offensive line, Will Fries, Donovan Jackson, who's a great athlete, even if there's some technical things that he's going to have to learn. He's a great athlete. And you have Ryan Kelly as well. That is a lot different. And getting Darisaw back whenever they get him back, that's a lot different. So I think that he'll be willing to lean on the run game more. But this is a quarterback-driven NFL still, even though running was better last year. It's a quarterback-driven offense. KOC is going to be KOC. It's going to be on JJ McCarthy. He is going to have a lot on his shoulders, and that's okay. That's what you drafted him for, and that's what he's going into another year for. I mean, this is that he was able to sit last year because of the injury, but I think they were going to sit him anyway because they wanted to make sure that when he got to this point that he was completely ready, because it's on your shoulders. And anytime you have Justin Jefferson, you're not designing your offense around a run game. You're designing it around people can't stop Justin Jefferson. Ron says, what is Brian Flores' contract situation? Do you think he should get a raise/extension? I believe Ben Gessling, Star Tribune, reported that he is going into the final year of his contract. I've never thought too much about coordinator contracts, but I suppose in Flores' case, it might be a little bit different because if he was a free agent, then another team would be maybe very excited to bring in Brian Flores. I mean, if they go through this year and they've got another top 5 defense and he's got the relationships in the building that he's got with these players that he's built over a couple of years, and he's got the dynamic pieces that he's put together in his own vision. I mean, the Wilf family, I think, has always shown that when push comes to shove, they will step up with those dollar figures. Now, my understanding is when it comes to coordinators, they haven't always been one of the higher paying teams. I don't know if that's just because they had people like Clint Kubiak who were new-ish or John DeFilippo. I'm not sure. But I think for somebody like Flores, it's been almost a co-coaching type of situation. No question that KOC is the one who's operating the entire franchise, but he's got the offense. Flores has got the defense. And since that's been the case, this defense has been phenomenal. And if that's the case again, then he's settled down here with his family, and it's gone really, really well for Brian Flores as far as reinvigorating his own reputation post Miami. He is now looked at around the league as being one of the top, if not the top defensive mind in the entire NFL. All that stuff seems pretty good for Brian Flores, but you never know. You never know what's going to happen in a year. That's just my understanding from Ben's reporting, but you never really know what's going to happen in a year. I think the fact that they have Durante Jones on this staff is really helpful, because if there is a moment where he takes a head coaching job or he, for whatever reason, wants to move on, I think that they've got an Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo thing that they need to keep going with. But if he were to move on, then they've had Durante Jones here underneath him for quite some time that could carry on the defense. So at least they have another person that I think could be next in line. I like this comparison. Quadri Ismail. Yeah, I mean, I actually interviewed Quadri a few years ago. Really, really good guy to talk with, and one of the coolest Vikings wide receivers, I think, ever. That's a good comparison. I don't think that Ty Felton is as fast as Quadri Ismail. I don't think so. I mean, the Ismails, him and his brother Rocket, those two guys, unreal speed. I mean, we're talking like 4.2s, low 4.3s, blazing fast. I think Felton was sub 4.4, but he's fast, but I don't think he's on the level of Rocket or Quadri Ismail. But in terms of the role, though, that could be it. I think the difference would be that Ishmael was more of a down the field type of guy, and maybe Era played into this as well. Whereas Felton is more of a get the ball in his hands and let him go with it. That's probably the difference. That normally you see this guy, the catch and run type of receiver. Normally you see that guy will be shorter. He won't be 6'1". He'll be 5'10", and then he kind of gets small into spaces and stuff like that, where Felton can actually run over people. This is funny from Melkill. Get yourself someone who looks at you like KOC looks at Jalen Naylor. I'll tell you, man, Jalen Naylor, we asked Justin Jefferson today about Naylor getting bigger. There's no question. There is no question that Jalen Naylor has jacked up. So maybe in for a big year. I don't know. Best shape of his life. I think we can actually say that Jalen Naylor is in the best shape that we've ever seen. Stephanie, good to see you. Stephanie says, I know you don't have O-line progress news, but can you make something up to tell me? Well, the only news that I can really share with the offensive line is that we are not seeing here in OTAs the look that we're going to see come the season, because Will Fries was not there. So it's Blake Brandel who's doing his job at right guard, and it's Justin Skol who is at left tackle as we wait for Christian Darrisaw to come back. But there's not a lot else to say other than that Donovan Jackson has been working with the ones, which is important because a lot of times this time of year, we don't see young players working with the first team and Jackson. So it gives you maybe the sense that he might be picking it up pretty quickly. That's just a guess based on the fact that they're having him work with the ones, but it was blatant when they drafted him. They want this guy to be their starting left guard. So why fiddle around? Why not just have him get out there? That's the best I can do on the offensive line right now. I think we know what it's going to look like when it's at its absolute best. And the only other thing I could say is that the depth of an offensive line is super important. And I do think that they have it. Now, that doesn't mean they have superstars behind their starters. There's 32 teams and there's not enough good offensive linemen in the league to make up a great depth line. But when Brandel can come off the bench, I'm intrigued to see what Michael Juergens looks like in training camp. He's the center that they drafted, because he might have to play 2 years ago. He might have to play with Ryan Kelly having some injury issues in the past. But that's kind of the best I could do right now, is that the week 1 offensive line is questionable at this moment. Not with Will Fries. I think Will Fries is going to be fine to come back by training camp. That's what KOC said. But we'll see if they're at 100% with Christian Darrisaw or not. We're going to have to find out what the timeline is. I don't think anybody asked KOC the other day. It was just all about McCarthy. But I think KOC talks again at the end of minicamp, maybe we'll get an update then. How did Sam Howell look today? Well, actually, we saw all the quarterbacks today. I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was a lot better or worse than the other day. Looks like a backup quarterback. The guy that impressed me, just to tell you the truth, and I'm not trying to be that guy, but I keep liking what I see from Max Brosmer. Every time we see Max Brosmer out there, rookie mini camp, and now today, he ran a drill at the red zone and had a couple of touchdown passes and finger quote touchdown passes. It's a red zone drill, so you start there and there's no pass rush. But I like what I've seen from Max Brosmer so far. I don't think he competes for QB2, but he might compete for QB3. And Howell, I mean, when he's out on the field, I'm probably going to watch the defensive guys. It just doesn't matter a whole lot to me. Like, we have a sample size of him playing in the NFL, and his first practice that we saw did not go that great, but this one was all right, I guess. I mean, that's from me mostly watching. When the second team was out there, I was looking a lot at the young defensive players. What does Kobe King look like? And the answer is thick. Kobe King looks thick. The Vikings have not had a thick linebacker since, I think, Ben Gideon. That was the comparison a couple of us were talking about on the sideline. Like, I don't think that they've had a real like thumper guy since Ben Gideon, probably. So Kobe King has my attention. Eric Wilson was out there a lot today because Josh Metellus is not doing the 7-on-7s. I think that's contract related. It might not be. It might not be. It might just be not putting too much on his body. But Eric Wilson was the one taking over the role for Josh Metellus today. So I think that Eric Wilson is immediately behind Blake Cashman and obviously Ivan Pace Jr. Melkill says, do you think that they would have worked in McCarthy last year had he been healthy, maybe later in the year? I don't know when. I don't know when that would have happened. Maybe in the blowout against... No. I mean, even against the Falcons, when they were up 21 at the end of the game, they ran the ball. They ran out the clock. No, I don't really know when that would have happened. I don't think he would have seen the field other than for like a kneel down or whatever if he would have played last year. I don't think they would have panicked after beating the Jaguars and benched Sam Darnold. I don't think that was going to happen. They were just winning too much at that point. And then Darnold got hot after that and played really, really well in Tennessee. Played great in Tennessee, played great against the Indianapolis Colts. No, against the Colts, he threw some bad picks and then played well, but it was against Tennessee where the light went on for Darnold and he played really well. So no, I don't think he would have seen any of the field last year other than maybe at the very, very end of, some games where they were blowing somebody out. But usually when they were blowing somebody out, they kind of let the team back in. But maybe against like Houston or something when they were up big, wouldn't have seen a lot of him, no. The only difference between last year and this year was just that they would have used him a lot in practice and he could have gotten to understand NFL speed a little bit better in practice and actually gone through the footwork and things like that, as opposed to just having to try to watch virtual reality. Let's see. John says, AI says Bernard Berrien is almost a perfect match for Ty Felton on height and weight. Well, I mean, if he becomes Bernard Berrien, that's a heck of a result for Ty Felton, for him to become a starting caliber wide receiver that Brett Favre cannot throw the ball to, instead throw it across his body. Sorry, guys. I didn't mean it. But truly, he should have just thrown it to Bernard Berrien. I mean, if he becomes somebody like that, I'm trying to think of how many wide receivers. Maybe I could pull this up and we can try to get a comparison, because I'm immediately starting at a point where I'm thinking about yards after catch. I don't think Berrien. I don't think that Felton is going to be the type of receiver, at least right away, that comes into the league and is just breaking off sick routes and looking like Allen Iverson on a football field, crossing guys over. Like, I don't think that's going to be him. When I watch him come in and out of his breaks, I think he's going to have to work on that. Not that it's going to ruin his career, but it's clear that he is going to have to work on that. So that to me means you're going to have to be a yards after catch guy. When I pull up yards after catch, I see Marvin Mims, Jamison Williams. I don't think he's that level speed of Jamison Williams. Deebo Samuel obviously is not somebody he's exactly built like. Khalil Shakir. Keon Coleman is on this list. They threw a lot of short passes in Buffalo. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, he's got the speed to be that guy, but I think he's a little better. Well, yeah, I mean, if he had yards after catch last year, Valdez-Scantling doesn't have the best hands, but I don't think of Valdez-Scantling as a short underneath guy at all. I think of him as entirely deep. Yeah, his average depth of target is 19. Let's see average depth of target. Curtis Samuel, that's an interesting one. Curtis Samuel's an interesting one because he's not the smallest guy, I don't think. Yeah, I don't know. I have not come up with one yet so far that I really like. Tyler Boyd? Nah. I think he's faster than Tyler Boyd. We're going to have to keep working on this one, guys. I don't have a great comparison at the moment for what Ty Felton can be. Brosmer over Howell, Mama? No, I don't think so. I think Howell is your guy. He's played in the NFL before. It's really Sam Howell versus Sam Howell is how I look at it. Because if Howell fails, then they're going to trade for somebody else. QB2 is not in the building if it's not Sam Howell. But I just like the way Brosmer looks for somebody that they can have as potentially QB3 if he beats out Brett Rippon. That decision might be based a lot on what they see in preseason between those two. I'll be interested to see Brosmer in preseason because I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of him and Brett Rippon in the preseason. And maybe there's a battle there. And look, we're only talking about a rookie minicamp and we're only talking about a couple of throws in OTAs. It just continues to stand out to me that he looks like a pro quarterback. BA4782, think Juergens will make the roster again as center number 2. My buddy's former college teammate. Well, that's cool for your buddy. I do think so. It was really telling last year to me that Michael Juergens was used and on the active roster over Dan Feeney. Dan Feeney is not a good football player, but he had been in the league for years and he had been a backup for years. And if a 7th round rookie is active on game day, I mean, that's telling us everything we need to know. That means they trusted him more than they trusted Dan Feeney to be the center if Garrett Bradbury went down last year. So I think he will very clearly be the second center. I also don't really see another one on the roster. Maybe there's some guys that they're cross-training, but I don't know if there's another center on the roster. I'm just interested in his progress because I think there's a very good chance he's going to have to play. So last year, I thought that he did pretty well in training camp. He was matching up with some guys that they're excited about. Taki Taimani, Levi Drake Rodriguez. Like we've seen a lot of Levi Drake Rodriguez. I brought that up after last week, but once again, he's been on the field a lot with this team. The other one that's out there a lot is Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins. And I think that they're immediately intrigued by Ingram-Dawkins and his size-speed combination. He's a big dude. He's definitely a tweener. Like he's not an edge rusher like an Andrew Van Ginkel or Grenard, but he's not quite the same size as the DTs. So he's in an interesting spot there, like a 3-4 defensive end. But it's caught my attention how much those guys have been out on the field. But the point that you're asking about with Juergens is, he's going to have a really big opportunity. And if he looks good next year, then there's more confidence that he can actually come and play, or next year in training camp in 2 months. But if he looks good, then there is maybe even confidence that they could be developing their future center, because I can't imagine Ryan Kelly is going to be in the NFL for more than another year or two with his history of injuries and things like that and just age in general. I think probably 2 years maybe is a fair guess for Ryan Kelly. So if you're developing Michael Juergens for a couple seasons, we know that, and Joe Berger was a great example of this, offensive linemen, the more you can develop them, the better chance they have to be very good. So, but good question there about Juergens. I'm interested in him. Let's see. Son of a Beaver says, with Jonathan Bullard visiting the Saints today, do you think the Vikings might try to bring him back or any more free agents like, say, Cam Akers? I could definitely see Sorry, Malkill, for bringing up '09. I mean, when someone says Bernard Berrian, what do you think of? Do you think of his days with the Bears, or do you think that he was wide open? Just throw it over there, Favre. We were all thinking it. Jonathan Bullard, yeah, I was actually a little surprised that they didn't bring back Jonathan Bullard, which says to me that maybe there's some confidence that Levi Drake Rodriguez and Taki Taimani can be these guys, or Jalen Redmond. I shouldn't forget Jalen Redmond. He was really good last year, especially against the run, had a couple of quarterback pressures, but was really good at knifing into the backfield, and looks like he might be a little beefier coming into camp this year. But Bullard was very good against the run. He could really stick a block. And I thought that he would be back as a rotational player, maybe with 300 snaps. And it's possible that Jonathan Bullard said, hey, you guys just signed 2 big name defensive tackles. That's going to take away my snaps. I got to find a place where I'm going to play because there's only so many years left in his career. He's on the older side too. That might be a situation where if he doesn't sign with someone else, you get to training camp and you bring him back if you're not pumped about the other guys. Cam Akers, I don't know. I don't know what the deal is there because, well, the same thing goes for Cam Akers. When the team brings in Jordan Mason, who, by the way, is enormous. I cannot tell you, this guy is massive. I mean, he's not. So I've seen Derrick Henry up close when the Vikings practiced against him. That's the largest running back I've ever seen in my life. And I don't know if anyone will ever top that, but Jordan Mason's really close. He is a massive human being. But if you're Cam Akers and you want to play and the team brings in Jordan Mason, you're probably not looking at the Vikings as a place you're going to come back to unless there's an injury. And we'll see what happens with Ty Chandler. He was back kick returning today, him and Isaiah Rodgers. Ty Chandler has that kick return role as someone who's done it a lot before in the past and has had some success with it. So they might just want to keep him in the RB3. And then if there's an injury, then you react to it. If Akers wanted to come back, though, I mean, that guy's a warrior. So, of course, you would want to see him back. Brosmer, for sure, with Brosmer, he just has it written all over him as a training camp favorite. Now, I think he's going to have a lot better mental makeup than some previous guys. Like, you know who I'm talking about from a couple of years ago that thought that they were QB1 and a superstar because they had fourth quarter comebacks, and some other fans believe that too. I think Max Brosmer is a much more grounded human being than that. But you know that if he has some success, that everybody's going to fall in love with Max Brosmer. That's for sure. What's JJ's weight? I did not personally weigh him, so I can't tell you that for sure. I didn't. Come over here, JJ. Come step on this scale. But if I had to guess, I'd say 215 probably. But I'm also like feet away from him. You know, I don't know, 100 feet away on a hill. It's a little bit tough to tell how much exactly. If I could do that, I would have a great carnival career for sure. We haven't discussed Bo Richter yet. It's not a live stream until we discuss Bo Richter. I'm high on Bo Richter. I have been since last year, since the training camp. And he was really good in camp. He was really good in preseason. He was really good on special teams. I think Bo Richter can play. And he's wearing 54 and he's like bald. So he kind of looks like Brian Urlacher. There you go. Purple Insider compares Bo Richter to Brian Urlacher. There's your comp of that's better than the Bernard Berrian one, right? But I think that I think he's got a future. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know if it's rotational. I don't know if it didn't look like he was working in with the ones, but I think as far as backup goes, that's his job right now since they didn't bring in anybody else. Nate, give us your boldest prediction for the 25-26 season. Do we do that with football? I never do that with football. Since Madden doesn't do it, I don't do it with the next season. Let's see. Because I always call it, like, when it's January 2025, I still call it the 2024 season. Usually it's only basketball where it crosses over. That's not what you're asking. Boldest prediction, I haven't thought of that. Every year I try to do like a 50 predictions or something and then go back and look and see which ones worked out and which ones didn't. I mean, the boldest prediction, what would that be? I mean, I feel like it has to be something about JJ McCarthy, but I kind of want to make it about the kicker. Like Will Reichard makes 92% of his kicks. Is that bold enough for you? I mean, is it even bold to say that I think the Vikings can win the division? That's not really bold. That's where the standard is. That's why it's hard. It's hard to find a bold one, because if you're like, yeah, I think that JJ McCarthy could throw for 32 touchdowns and they could win the division. It's like, well, they just did this with Sam Darnold and won 14 games last year, so that's not that bold. I'm going to think about that. How about Dallas Turner gets 8 sacks? Is that bold? Probably not. He's a first-round draft pick. I'm struggling with what even is defined as bold. I'll have to think about that. The 99-yard touchdown for Bernard Berrien. That's a good one. Yep. Bring the scale to practice next time. Yes, I'll see what I can do. Can we ask the new intern? Maggie is waiting, and she'll be jumping in very soon here, by the way. She's got a lot of great stuff prepared for tonight's show, but I don't think that she's going to be asked to break down the punter battle. We did see a little bit of Oscar Chapman today weightlifting, and let me tell you, today's punters are not punters of yesteryear. He could beat you up very easily. That's really the best I got. I mean, I watched them punt the first OTAs next to each other. Ryan Wright can definitely punt it farther than Oscar Chapman. I don't think there's any question about how far Ryan Wright can punt. But the thing is, now okay. You guys, you asked, I'll give it to you. Okay. If they're going to have these kick returns, if they go out of the back of the end zone or are kneeled down, if they're going to bring guys out to the 35-yard line with the offense, this is going to have a result on the punters. I'm telling you, you have to be more finesse than power. You can't just be a raw power punter if you're starting at the 35, because if you get 5 yards, you're at the 40. Now you're talking about almost coffin corner. You get 1 first down and have to punt. You're in coffin corner mode. So yeah, this might make it challenging for Ryan Wright. I still think he's the punter by far, but Oscar Chapman's going to have his shot. And if we get Maggie out for a training camp practice, that'll be one of her main things for that day, is to track all punts. Melkill says, bold prediction, someone other than JJ McCarthy or JJ will be team MVP next year. That could happen. That could be, well, it's really hard for anyone other than Justin Jefferson to be better than Justin Jefferson. But I did think of, if some of those pressures that Jonathan Grenard got last year turn into sacks and he ends up with 15 sacks or something, and that's possible he could be the team MVP. Sean says, does your prediction models on division winners slide now that Ragnow has retired? I don't think it's going to change. I don't think so. I don't think that, I learned this a long time ago with one player leaving or one player getting injured, that usually that's not moving the scales a lot unless it's a quarterback. The quarterback is what's really going to change things. Just think with Detroit, and look, their defense is stacked. Their offense is also stacked personnel wise, but so much of their success was built off their offensive line over the last couple of years. I think it's going to be harder. I don't think that they're going to fall off the map. I don't think they're going to win way less games. I just think it's going to be a lot harder track for Detroit. And we could talk about that a little more with Maggie as well. So why don't we do that? Bring in Maggie Robinson, intern Maggie, who formerly worked behind the scenes in production with the National Football League, going back to college to focus on doing this here hosting. So Maggie, you put together a lot for tonight. Where would you like to begin? And guys, feel free to keep asking questions. I can answer and talk at the same time. I'm good like that. So where do you want to begin, Maggie?
Okay, well, to back up a little bit, I want to begin with punting, because you mentioned in preseason, if I come out for a game or a practice, that I could track punts. I would also like to position to you a punt off between you and I. I know we've never met in person, but I think this could be fun. And listen, before I left the NFL, it was supposed to be me versus the Next Gen Stats guy, who's the director of Next Gen Stats. And he was a punter at Yale, and I was a goalkeeper at Penn. And so we're like, guys, this is perfect. Unfortunately, that never happened. But if you want to be in the punt off with me, I'm just saying I'd be a willing participant, and it'd be great content. But chat, let me know what you think.
You are certainly willing to try that, but you will win. Like I have one freakish athletic skill, which is shooting a basketball. I'm very, very good at shooting a basketball. I am good at almost nothing else when it comes to sports wise. And I played soccer until the age of, I think, 11, and I was horrible at soccer. All things related, I've tried kicking field goals, all things related to kicking, very, very bad. So
Okay.
I don't expect myself to be able to punt a ball anywhere near as far as you, because that was like your main thing as a soccer goalie, was getting it and then punting it.
Yes. I just think you have time to practice. What, preseason games like in August? We could get some reps in, you know? You could see if you could go inside TCO in the indoor facility, like when they're outside, if you need a little movement break mid-practice.
Yeah,
So
that's
we're
what
kind
I'll that's what
Yeah.
I'll spend my summer doing, learning how to punt. That seems like a great idea. Probably not though. Okay, but we can certainly focus on how good the actual punters are at doing that when you come out to practice.
Absolutely. But I do want to kick it off with some OTA headlines. And OTA headlines pretty much means let's talk about the overreactions of OTAs. It has been 4 months since we've seen football. Everyone is freaking out. Beat reporters take the tiniest bit of knowledge they can find on a field and then blow it up out of proportion into crazy stories and big headlines. So I pulled some from around the league, and I just want to pose them to you. We can chat, we can agree, we can disagree. There's some good ones in here. There's some really hard-hitting football, and then there's just some frivolous, juicy, fun ones. So we're going to kick it off with some real football, though. It was a tweet saying the Saints could have a top O-line in the NFL, and the O-line they're referring to is Kelvin Banks Jr. at left tackle, Trevor Penning at left guard, Eric McCoy at center, Cesar Ruiz at right guard, and Taliese Fuaga at right tackle. Okay, those names, great. They're all top round picks. That is awesome. However, 3 of the 5 of them have not been able to play a full season due to injury, and one of them is untested as a rookie. That's Kelvin Banks Jr. He's coming out highly acclaimed from college at Texas, but he's untested. We don't really know. Taliese Fuaga, he's the one guy that we're like, all right, he's got it. We can trust you to get the job done. The other 3 of them, great, and they're vets, but like, stay healthy. My God, I can't trust you to go through a full season.
And with Penning, he's already moving positions, which is
Right.
a super big red flag when you're talking about somebody in their second year, third year, second
It's
year,
third year.
third year, who's already moving positions, and they wouldn't have had to draft other linemen had Penning actually been any good for them. So I do have a little bit of trouble believing that he's going to be an above average left guard. But also, we've talked about here on the show how I think that the Vikings have a pretty darn good offensive line, and we could project it forward based on Ryan Kelly's been great in his career. Will Fries is emerging, and Donovan Jackson's a first-round pick. But we can't really judge an offensive line from OTAs because they're not hitting each other. So how good is Kelvin Banks going to be? We have absolutely
No
no
idea.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, I think that during OTAs, here's what I'll say for everybody covering teams is that you can't project injuries, you can't project calamities. And this time of year, it's the easiest time to be like, this sounds good because it all looks good on paper. And if we went through all 32 teams, I mean, there's optimism abound. It's one of the things that makes the NFL so great. I'm not buying almost anything New Orleans Saints. I mean, I think if you were taking all 32 teams and going, who is the most screwed out of all 32 teams, I don't know that they're dead last, but they are close to dead last. The only reason I would say they're not dead last is because they could draft Arch Manning next year or whoever the first overall quarterback is. That's about the best I could do. And I also saw some reporting on Tyler Shuck, like, well, he's really showing off his physical skills and everything. I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, we're going to have to see a little bit more before we decide that he's all of a sudden a good quarterback when he's, 26 years old and was a second round draft pick. There's not a lot of great markers there.
Yeah, meanwhile, Spencer Rattler peaked in high school.
Ooh.
Awesome. You got a great twofer right there. I also wanted to call out this offensive line gave up 37 sacks. That's 20th in the NFL. Those are terrible numbers. And they had 8 different players play over 25% of the offensive snaps, and that's first in the league. They did not have a consistent lineup, so who are we to claim that's delusional optimism is what that is. It's
that is, like, they were
titles. We'll just make a bunch of assumptions that aren't really true.
They were 32nd by PFF, by the way. So yeah, the Saints are going to have a ways to go for their offensive line. What other headlines we got?
Moving it up north, we have in Buffalo. Here's a headline that I'm just going to read it straight off. These are not my words. This is the headline. Buffalo Bills wide receiver Keon Coleman turns head with ripped physique at OTAs.
Ooh. That's every once in a while. Every once in a while, if you're watching, like, I don't know, Sex in the City on the E channel at 1:00 in the morning, not that I would know this, I just philosophically speaking,
Sure.
The E channel, like, their news will come up, and most of it is like, oh, this celebrity was spotted walking down the street wearing something, or look at so and so celebrity's beach bod. I feel like that's how that sounds to me. Is like,
Yeah.
Keon Coleman is ready for summer. He can join Stefon Diggs on a boat if he wants to. Look at how good he looks. So we've been doing a little bit of this with Jalen Naylor. Now, Naylor did go clearly into the offseason with the aim to get bigger, because I don't think he had ever done this before. So that is newsworthy to some extent.
Mhm.
But the funniest part about the Keon Coleman photos is, I don't know if you've ever watched The Office, but there's a meme where Pam says, it's the same picture. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, it's the same picture. That's the same person. I don't see any difference from Keon Coleman. I also think the Bills, just in general, like, they're trying to make Keon Coleman happen. And I don't know if that's actually going to happen. I'm not so sure that he is really going to be the receiver they think he is.
Someone in the comments said, bro is corny. That's a great adjective. Absolutely. And to your point, he showed marginally more, quad muscle, I think. They're saying he had a ripped physique. Mind you, he's wearing a jersey, a long sleeve shirt, gloves, helmet, black, like, you have maybe this much of his legs and a tiny bit of bicep. It looks like he put on a solid 10 pounds of muscle. That's awesome. He drank his protein shakes. He followed his trainer's regimen. That's what you're supposed to do in the offseason when you're going from rookie to second year. This is not news. Like, is it this slow of a time that we're commenting? And this, again, feels like I'm picking up a magazine while my mom's like checking out at the grocery store, and I'm scrolling through and it's like, oh, Keon Coleman, he's jacked. Awesome. Ready for
Well, I was also going to say vocal Vike might also mean I'm corny for watching Sex in the City at 1:00 in the morning. I am married, though, by the way. I think if you're doing that alone, then maybe you got some problems. But just with in general, I think if you're in a place like Buffalo, so think about New Orleans and Buffalo. It couldn't be more far on the spectrum of competitive NFL teams right now. Like, the Saints are very, very bad, and the Bills should compete for a Super Bowl again. But in both circumstances, if you're covering those teams, you're scraping for stuff, because with Buffalo, it's like, yeah, you know what really matters with this team? January. Like, we are very far from what matters. So you're just trying to pick up on anything. And the Saints, they're like, hey guys, keep reading my coverage.
Please keep me employed in the off season. I beg you. So he does have big shoes to fill following Stefon Diggs, obviously, and he put up good numbers. He had 29 receptions, 556 yards, and 4 touchdowns last season. So I do think the added muscle will help, and it sounds like he's quicker because of it. That's great. If this works to his benefit, that's awesome. I just don't think this is news here. Something else I don't really think is news, but I think is really fun, and I'm going to hit you with regardless. It's called Stupid Observation of the Day from NBC Sports Philadelphia. The new long snapper they just signed is the only long snapper on the Philadelphia Eagles roster. He is coming from the Cleveland Browns, where he was the longest tenured player. Charlie Hewlett was seen filling in as kick returner and was tossing the ball as a backup quarterback, an easy 30-plus yards. So maybe there's a trick play coming for the Eagles. I wouldn't put it past him. Sirianni has some tricks up his sleeve, but what do you think there?
I think, one, we love long snappers on this show, and I can tell you exactly why, because you're familiar with the Minneapolis Miracle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the Minneapolis Miracle, did we talk about this, was caused by a long snapper?
Oh, you mentioned it, but I don't know if I got the whole breakdown.
Okay. I might have told you this off the air. So the Vikings long snapper got hurt toward the end of the 2017 season. So they signed a backup long snapper, and in the Minneapolis Miracle game, he messed up the blocking assignment that allowed a punt to be blocked, which opened the door for Drew Brees to come back in the game, which ultimately caused the Minneapolis Miracle. So it was caused by a long snapper. And since then, we have had a little bit of an obsession. Plus, the Vikings have the literal best long snapper in the entire league now, Andrew DePaula, who has been All-Pro for the last 2 years. So I love that a long snapper is messing around and getting punts and also throwing passes. And it reminds me of in 2018 where Brian O'Neill was catching passes in warmups because he had been a tight end. So they were running some plays and drills for Brian O'Neill to catch touchdowns at the goal line. And I made a bet with another reporter, like over under 1 touchdown for Brian O'Neill during the season. And I won the bet with under. It tells you a little bit about OTAs when people are saying to us, like, how does McCarthy look? What's going on? And Philadelphia is like, hey, long snapper, you want to catch a punt? Sure. Or take a kickoff? Here, throw a pass. Like, that's kind of where we're at with OTAs.
Yeah, I think that perfectly sums it up. Another crazy one. This was a great headline. I've seen 1,000 Shedeur Sanders highlights and 0 lowlights. He is him. Are you kidding me? What are we doing? There is in what world is Shedeur Sanders him? I'm sorry. He's not legendary. His dad is, and we can end the conversation right there. We won't, but we could.
We might be able to. We'll see what happens with his career. We can't call it, but the amount of 5th-round quarterbacks who have ever turned into starting quality quarterbacks in the NFL is very low. Although opportunity could be abound in Cleveland if they're going to start Flacco and maybe lose the first 6 games of the season, and then maybe Shedeur Sanders ultimately gets to play. So we'll see. I don't want to call it yet on Shedeur. I don't want to be a hater, but I did last year get into a war of words with the Cleveland media over joint practices. Oh, yeah. And for the longtime followers, they will remember this, that they had brought me on one of their shows and asked me how it was going in the joint practice. And I said, well, your offense is just atrocious. Deshaun Watson, and he was throwing interceptions, looked like he was getting sacked constantly. The Vikings defense was thrilled with their performance, but some of that was because Watson was looking so bad. Right. So then they were like replaying my comments and having every beat reporter come on and say that I was exaggerating and everything. And I was like, no, I know how to watch a practice. That ain't how it's supposed to look with Deshaun Watson. So of course, him being the worst quarterback in the NFL last year, I may have enjoyed a little bit of that, being right about it. But that Cleveland media over this thing, what else? It's like the Saints. Okay, we got to grip onto something, but they have a celebrity. So grip onto the celebrity and just lean into it and take every single click you can get, because that team's winning nothing. So that's what I might do the same thing. I mean, I don't think I'd be as homerish about it as some of them have been with Shedeur Sanders, because again, it's OTAs. So with every McCarthy OTA, we come back and go, now look, everybody, it's an OTA, and like, let's just take this one day at a time and we won't overreact. And Cleveland media is just like, I tattooed Shedeur on my face. Like, it's out of control, but also they have to be. What hope do you have? You have no immediate, you have no future. You have fans that have waited 100 years for Otto Graham to come through the door again. You've got nothing. You might as well lean into it and just hope and pray to the football gods that maybe he becomes a halfway decent quarterback, because otherwise you are just lost out there in the NFL as the most irrelevant and sad and pathetic franchise. So best of luck with Shedeur, who was not even the highest drafted quarterback in the class. Very promising stuff.
That you summed it up. One other quote from the ESPN Cleveland radio, quote, I think Shedeur Sanders is the most talented quarterback in the Cleveland Browns roster.
I mean, that is a
sir, there is no way.
I mean, that's like saying that you're the most talented person at punting a football in this live stream. Like, yeah, I mean, that's great, but you're not like Team USA's goalie or something.
I'm not. I wasn't that good, unfortunately. No. I also have one more question for the quarterback room. So they can only have 3 quarterbacks active on a game day roster, correct?
I think that you can have as many as you want, but normally they have 2 active and then there's like the extra quarterback guy. Yeah. So that's how it usually works.
So in your mind, let's say it's game 1. Who's your top 3? I can tell you my top 3. I think it's got to be Joe Flacco based on his experience. He even came out to the media and they asked him, are you trying to be a mentor in this room? And Joe Flacco, is 18 years in the NFL. The man has seen it all. He's going to give you the most blunt answer to the media. So he said, I'm going to be honest with you, I find it offensive when you ask that I want to be a mentor, because that assumes that I won't be playing and that all I'm here for is experience. And he was like, no, I'm not here to be a mentor. That also makes me look rude and mean and some words I can't say on air. So what's he supposed to do? I do think he has the most experience and he's the most talented guy here. I think you got to put Kenny Pickett in second. And then honestly, it's still in Gabriel. You drafted him higher. I think Shador and Deshaun is out of the picture. I don't want to say his name on here, but I don't know. Do you just kind of sit with Shador and what do you do with the guy? He's dead weight a little bit.
Yeah, I think what they're probably going to do, and we'll see about Gabriel, son of Beavers. I also saw that the media has just hated Dylan Gabriel, which makes sense because he's not a celebrity. So you're not going to get the clicks from Dylan Gabriel. You're going to get them from Shedeur Sanders. And I'm not at those practices, but I also don't trust them watching practices after last year. And the one radio station seems to be very trolly when it comes to this Shedeur Sanders thing. So congratulations to them. They have no winning, and the Cleveland Cavs weren't even good either. And I don't think that the Guardians are that good. So anyway, they're Cleveland. What can you say? But I think the way they should probably handle it is to have Joe Flacco versus Kenny Pickett as the camp battle. And whoever wins will start, probably Flacco, but man, Pickett's terrible. So I don't know, probably Flacco. And then after like 4 or 5 weeks, you just go to Shedeur if he looks at all competent. But it's hard to do that. One of the reasons it's hard to do that, even though it makes sense philosophically to just throw in a rookie and everyone wants it, why don't they just throw in the young guy? Like that when Kellen Mond was here, there were people who were like, why don't they just throw in Kellen Mond? It's like, because he's horrible. But once you do that, if the guy can't play, your offense is a nightmare and you can't even evaluate the other players you have. Like you don't even know what to do with the stats of the receivers, the linemen. Like, I mean, that is one thing I'll give the Saints and their offensive line, even though I believe in it about as much as you do. Like the thing about that is they were playing Spencer Rattler last year. It's like, who can look good when blocking, receiving, whatever, when they're down to a third or a fourth quarterback. And that's a reason to play Flacco for maybe the majority of the season, even if you're struggling, is to just make sure you're able to evaluate, kind of like with Miami when they were tanking for Tua and they had Ryan Fitzpatrick playing. Like he's not going to win you a championship, but he's certainly going to let you like be in games and figure things out about what you have going forward, because that's the only real position that they're in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's not much more to be said. I feel like it's already been, that conversation's been had, but something that I do want to talk to you about, this one's juicy. This one's kind of pop culture-y, playing into my little Gen Z pop culture sphere. Stefon Diggs, the boat, the pink substance in a bag that looked like Pop Rocks, but definitely was not. Albert Breer came out and said, quote, everything's on the table for the Patriots after Stefon Diggs' viral boat video. A lot of people are questioning, is Vrabel going to kick him off the team? Will he still be here? He was back at OTAs. He made an appearance, said hi to the media, quick little, hey guys, how you doing, as he ran onto the field. Just had to make his presence known. He's here. He's practicing. What do you make of the boat situation? Is he going to get cut? I don't think there's any way he will, but I want to hear your perspective.
It's very funny that like on this such podcast, if you say, what do you make of the boat situation? People think of an entirely different boat, which I'll have the audience know that I did suggest to you when a funny boat thing came up to go look at the Wikipedia of the Vikings love boat. Yeah. And I'd love your reaction to that.
I got educated in things that I didn't, this was pre-phone for me. So I was not aware of that whole situation, probably for a good thing.
It's a lot of things happen on that boat. And I think, and still things are happening on the NFL boats with Stefon Diggs. I would guess that they don't really care outside of the fact that people found out. If no one found out and they had never put it on whatever program they put it on, whether Instagram or TikTok or whatever, Cardi B's friends decided to live stream him slapping booty and doing drugs. I mean, my guess is that there are other NFL players, and it's just a guess, who have engaged in similar partying at some point in their lives and still are able to strap on a helmet and go catch a football. The NFL decided years ago it did not care about this stuff anymore, and it just moved on. And the thing is, with a headline like this, as soon as Diggs puts the helmet on and goes and practices and catches footballs and whatever, no one will care. I'm not endorsing this type of behavior, but what I would say is, from being around these guys for the last decade, there are many players who live a very different life than you and I. Like, you and I don't party in Miami with famous rappers, okay? Like, we go to our jobs and live our life, and I eat pizza as like a party night and watch Sex in the City at 1:00 in the morning. Like, this is not how the NFL players who make millions and millions of dollars carry themselves. But also, I think that we've probably in the past massively overrated like what things like this do to on the field. I mean, they used to suspend guys for the weed and so forth. That was ridiculous. I mean, that wasn't enhancing their performance. And whatever the substance Stefon Diggs was using potentially or handing out to all of his friends, I don't think it's going to affect performance either. So this will be one of those things that we laugh about years later and are like, oh yeah, remember in OTAs when people cared about Diggs in his boat? I will say though that they need him. Like, they've got not a lot there still. They've drafted guys. They've thrown a bunch of dollars at it. Oh, does she know what Sex in the City is?
I'm offended. Please.
You know that. It is. But it is quite old, Sex in the City. I mean, you watch it.
So I lived in the West Village in New York until last week. I had to know it was happening.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Classic show though. I think it's very funny, but it's not me partying on a boat in Miami is the point. That it's just these people they run in different circles. They live in a different universe. One time I was in Miami Beach, and there's this long stretch of clubs that you walk by. And I emphasize that I walked by because there's no way anyone's ever letting me in there, nor would I ever want to be in there. And you think about the athletes and everything else that are partying in these places, they make millions of dollars. And it's just, I mean, that's a life that people are living that I'm not. And lots of athletes do it and then go play. How about the Dennis Rodman stories from The Last Dance and stuff? It's just, this is the way that some people are. So the only thing I was thinking about Diggs though, is if the Minneapolis Miracle never happened, does he date Cardi B? Like, I mean, he was a really good receiver for the Vikings, but the Minneapolis Miracle changed things for him in terms of his celebrity and being out there. And I think it also changed things in Minnesota with the way he even viewed himself within that franchise. And in 2019, it was very toxic around him, where he said one of the great lines I've ever heard in my life, which was, "There's truth to all rumors." He said, when he was asked if he wanted to be traded, he said, "There's truth to all rumors." And I'm like, okay, I'm going to use that forever for the rest of my entire life. And I have, but his demeanor, I think, was a little bit different after that. And I've always been a Diggs defender. He was right about the Vikings offense. He was right to want to trade and go to Buffalo, where Josh Allen was on the rise and they were going to be a Super Bowl contender. And he was probably a little bit wrong in Buffalo when he worked his way out of there to go to the Houston Texans, because Buffalo was a better team. But I've always thought he was a hot and cold type of guy, great wide receiver, really great wide receiver, but volatile. And stuff like this doesn't make you think less volatile. It makes you think more. And New England's got to be prepared to deal with that. And if they can't, then he won't be there for very long, because I think his contract looked like a lot of money, but actually wasn't. It actually allowed them to get out of it pretty much whenever they wanted.
All I'm saying is that he should be glad it's not Belichick who's his head coach. I feel like that would have been a different conversation, or it would have been even more covered up. We never would have seen it, never would have heard it, because that machine would have just worked its magic.
They did briefly bring in Antonio Brown to the, I don't know. They've had, the Patriots did cheating of their own. So I feel they had Aaron Hernandez on the team. I don't know. Yeah. I think the Patriots were willing to play in the dirt a little bit with Bill Belichick, but no, yeah. I mean, with something like this, I don't think that anyone would care at all if Diggs was missing an OTA practice to be there. I think that it's the fact that he got out. So are you like a Cardi B person? I don't know a lot about Cardi B.
I would say I'm neither a Cardi B fan nor a hater. I'm just kind of I respect her for her artistry. She's obviously very talented at what she does. Is it my kind of music? No. But you know what? Like, she's getting her bag, and I can respect that. She's made a lot of money. She's in a really messy divorce right now, and she has a really little kid. So that's a little tough to be embroiled in all of this boat partying, Instagram storying of various forms of whatever. I just wish the best for them as a happy couple, but I also hope Stefon Diggs performs as he should on the football field and doesn't let these distractions get to him. It feels like when you're in high school and the high school coach says, "Oh, please don't get a girlfriend. You're going to be distracted. And you're not going to be able to play well." That's what it feels like, except for Stefon Diggs is, I think, 32 and a full-grown adult. So,
okay, so this is really funny. Cardi B is like 10 years older than Bill Belichick's girlfriend.
no.
Yeah. She's
Cardi B's
32.
34?
She's 32. So that's what, 8 years?
Since we're on this topic, I wasn't going to bring it up. Guys, I have a story for you. I almost met and almost fully conversed with Jordan Hudson. So at NFL Honors, when we go to Super Bowl, there's NFL Honors where they give out all the postseason awards. And I'm walking through the little scanners. I'm in my little dress. You have to dress up for it. I'm in a Zara dress and borrowed heels. I don't look the part. The girl in front of me is wearing this stunning silver dress, and she looks beautiful. And I'm a girl's girl. So she's walking through, and I say, "Oh my gosh, I love your dress." And then she goes to pick up her little football purse that she puts through the scanners, and it's bejeweled, and turns around, and it's Jordan Hudson, and the entire middle of her dress is cut out. And there's Bill Belichick with his 6 rings on his hands, standing there just staring at me and her. And I froze in that moment. I really didn't know what to do. I ate my words immediately. They never came out of my mouth. And that's how I almost spoke with her. And it was a crazy experience. We don't look the same age. There is no, my hot take is that she's older than me, and I'm 24. I don't think we're the same age, but I know the whole Pablo Torre thing says she might even be younger than me. I don't know. Maybe there's some plastic. I don't know. Lots of speculation.
There has been a lot of speculation, way more than I ever needed in my entire life to find out about Bill Belichick's girlfriend. I was trying to think for her, why would she want to be younger? Because that makes it creepier. But I don't understand a lot of things about that relationship. And then I love that Jeremiah in the comments just says, "Have you seen Gabe Murphy out there? Like, please move on from Bill Belichick and Stefon Diggs and so forth." But
that's a football podcast.
Gabe Murphy indeed was out there, but how he looks, we're going to have to wait till training camp for the defensive players because they're not allowed to put their hands on the offensive players at this moment. So that, unless somebody looks like much stronger or something like Dallas Turner does, can't really have a lot of takeaways. Corners, a little bit. Corners we can because they're guarding wide receivers, but they can't hit the wide receivers. So not so much even with corners. So yes, Gabe Murphy still exists, and I'm intrigued. I am intrigued because he was very good in training camp last year as an undrafted free agent. So he could be that guy. Okay, since I can really sense that we should move on before this goes into even weirder territory.
Right. Let's go to LA.
Okay.
With the Justin Herbert, Ladd McConkey combo. Someone says, Bleacher Report says specifically, Justin Herbert to Ladd McConkey is the, quote, next big connection. Is this overblown or is this legit? I personally think this is legit, and I will tell you why. In 2024, Herbert targeted him more than any other Chargers player, and he led the team in yards by over 400. Like, the next closest person was 400 yards below him. That's pretty impressive. His receiving yards were 1,149. Pretty solid. That's 9th out of 98 wide receivers in the league. So I think this is a fair shout. I don't think this is too overblown. Do I think it's a little funny to be saying all this and making a big hubbubaloo in OTAs? Sure. But it feels like a fair assessment.
Well, I think especially because the Chargers did not really go crazy with wide receiver in the offseason, that I kind of expected them to do as I'm being challenged to start rapping. I can rap. I can do a lot of.
You won't.
I probably won't. I would have to have something to rap, but I could do it. I
You're a
can do
musician. We've known this.
I can do things. I can do a lot of things musically. It's not that hard if you know how to do it. But anyway, with back to Lad McConkey, how did Joe Huber and Logan Brown look? They're real. They're real people. They have numbers. I've seen them. But no, I mean, the Vikings are playing the Chargers. So this is a relevant thing of like, how good of a passing game are they going to have? Because last year, Lad McConkey was really all that Justin Herbert had. And I guess I'm going to have to like check here with the Chargers depth chart, unless I'm
Quentin
missing
Johnson
something.
for 55 receptions, 711 yards. So he was kind of number 2. And they just drafted Trey Harris.
Okay, and that's a second round draft pick. Mike Williams is back, but he's coming off an injury. Jalen Reagor is a Los Angeles Charger, so watch out there.
All right.
They picked up Tyler Conklin, former Viking. They've got a tight end who's a guy. Yeah, no, I mean, really, a lot of this comes down to who else are they going to throw to? I mean, if Trey Harris is good right away, and sometimes second round receivers are, they lost Josh Palmer in free agency. I think did he sign with Buffalo? I think so. I think that this McConkey Herbert combination is going to be just as good or better than the past. Where I'm wondering about the Chargers is how much Jim Harbaugh wants to enter the year 2000, because last year Herbert's numbers are actually kind of crazy. He threw the ball so little and for so few yards and touchdowns versus a guy that scored so well by PFF and other metrics. He was 4th best by PFF, but only threw 504 passes and 3,800 yards, 23 touchdowns, only 3 picks though. I mean, that's exactly what Jim Harbaugh football is. Protect the football, don't turn it over, high completion percentage, low risk. Like, I'm curious with Herbert, even where he ranked. He did rank high in big time throws last year. So that means what? 3rd down and long, where you're having to push the ball down the field. If they leaned into Justin Herbert more, I think they could be a more dangerous offense. But the way they acted in the offseason with their receiver position doesn't really look like they want to do that. It looks like they went all in on running back. Omarion Hampton and Najee Harris, they're running the football, man. So yes, I think that he'll get 1,000 yards. McConkey, he'll be the guy, but I would have been looking for more weapons rather than another running back for the Chargers.
Yeah, it feels like, excuse me, you can trust what you have, but you also got to have numbers back there. A little bit of depth that you can actually use off the bench and know there won't be a drop off is very valuable. And I don't think they currently have it right now. So we'll see how that goes for them. I want to pivot a little bit into, we mentioned it earlier, the Frank Ragnow retirement. Excuse me, something in my throat. 29-year-old, 4-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro, announced his retirement earlier today on Instagram. He is stepping away from the field after 7 years as one of the best centers in the NFL. And he leaves behind, as you were saying, honestly, such a legacy. He's such a humble, the position, as you were saying, doesn't get a lot of hype. You don't get a lot of love. They're not diva positions, if you will. But everyone has had great things to say about him. The outpouring of love and support that he has received is really special, and it makes you feel for the guy. And it's like, those are the guys you really appreciate. And those are the ones you're really sad to see leave. But you have to respect his decision. He's been struggling with a toe injury off and on, foot, knee, ankle, back. I read he once played through a fractured throat. Did you know that?
I did know that. And he was always, because the Vikings played the Lions, or they willed and always will, 2 times a year. And every single time Frank Ragnow was dealing with some horrific injury and then was awesome. Like every single time going into a game, I forget what it was that he had last year, but you definitely should not play with it. And that ultimately, I'm sure, ended up hurting his chances to have a longer career. We also saw, was it Connor Williams last year, midway through the season for Seattle, just call it quits with so many injuries. And he was another offensive lineman who was really good. Now looking at the offensive line for the Detroit Lions, I do think they should have some concerns. Taylor Decker is not the player that he used to be. Christian Mahogany is a young guy. Graham Glasgow, I think, is okay, but just a guy. Tate Ratledge is a rookie, and then Penei Sewell is awesome. And what often comes down to with offensive lines is your weakest link. So what is, and that's just their depth chart of who they're projecting now to play center is Glasgow. I don't know how that's going to work out, but that to me does not sound like Kevin Zeitler and Frank Ragnow in the middle like it did last year. It sounds a lot less dangerous. And that was, for them, that was a weapon that they had. And if you look back, when it comes to like the Dallas Cowboys a couple years ago, they had this incredible offensive line. That was when Dak first came in the league. They were running for 5 yards a carry with Zeke. And all of a sudden, you lose a piece here, you lose a piece there. There's some injuries. It's just not the same. And Dak's not the same. And then Dak gets hurt. And I don't know. Like, I think it's very hard to project Detroit to just fall off. But if they went from the best offense in the league to the 9th best, like, where are they at, right? Like, then they're just maybe a 10-win type of football team. I think that's realistic for Detroit because Ragnow was a huge part of what they did.
Yeah, I will also say they are, thank you, Mike North, tied for second hardest strength of schedule. So they are really in for trial by fire of figuring out this new offensive line. It's going to be throwing guys in there, seeing what they can do. Do you think it's going to be Graham Glasgow starting? I was seeing that Tate Ratledge could potentially, but it's really risky in my mind to start a rookie at center. That is a position that is the quiet leader in the brain, I think, of the offensive line, and the way that the quarterback is the vocal, in-your-face kind of guy. That just requires a certain maturity and aptitude that, not to discount Tate Ratledge, but I don't know if he has coming straight out of college.
Yeah, I think that is, your observation is right about a rookie center. It's a really, really hard job because that's where, now with a veteran quarterback, maybe it's easier because the pass protection gets set by the quarterback a lot of times, and Jared Goff could probably take that onto his shoulders, but everything starts with that guy in the communication up front. And that's where I would always give Garrett Bradbury more credit is, like, I understand that physically he was not the best blocker. Run blocking, he was better, but pass blocking struggled. But I also thought that communication-wise, he was very good. And he was vital for Sam Darnold last year in learning the offense and learning the reads and everything else. Asking a rookie to go in there and be that guy, I think is a lot, especially with other veterans on the offensive line. Just to give you an idea, though, of how much they're losing in Zeitler and free agency, which I was shocked they didn't try to bring him back, and Frank Ragnow. Ragnow was number 2 among centers in run blocking grade, and Zeitler was number 3 among all guards in run blocking grade. You're losing 2 of the elite players in the league at that position. It's just going to be harder. Jahmyr Gibbs is really good, but we know that offensive line and running back success are tied together, as we saw from Saquon Barkley going from 3.9 yards a carry to 6 yards a carry or whatever it was last year in Philadelphia. This is a big blow to Detroit, and it's very relevant to the Minnesota Vikings.
On top of the fact that they lost their offensive and defensive coordinators. I don't see how you can replicate the same success you had with different personnel on every level. You lose Ben Johnson to the Bears, replaced by John Morton. He'd spent a year, or had spent time previously with the Lions as a senior offensive assistant. Dan Campbell likes to promote guys who he's already worked with. Case in point, his losing defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, to the Jets, replaced with Kelvin Shepard, who has never actually been a defensive coordinator. This is his first time doing this job. And yes, he's moved his way up through the ranks pretty fast, but that's a lot of trust in 2 brand new guys with a whole new line of people. You just can't expect the same team, I don't think. I don't think that's an overstatement.
This might be the first time in a very, very long time where the Minnesota Vikings have the best offensive line in the NFC North. Maybe 2012 could have been the last time when Adrian Peterson went for 2,000 yards. 2009 with Brett Favre, they had an incredible offensive line. That might be the last time the Vikings were number 1 in the NFC North, because there's been the Packers for years with Aaron Rodgers, David Bakhtiari. They were great with those teams. And then the Lions have kind of taken over that, though Chicago really stacked up their line with Joe Thuney, Dahlman, the center, and they've done a lot of work there. But I think it's going to be a problem for them. And that with Jared Goff. If it was Lamar Jackson, whose offensive line is a little suspect, you would probably say, okay, well, he'll just run away. That's not Jared Goff. Jared Goff cannot just run away. I think they're going to have some issues there.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's look at the other side of the ball and let's pivot teams. We're calling this segment, I've already kind of hit it the last 2 times, UDFA Underdog of the Week, which is the fun game where I go through the undrafted free agent list that the Vikings have signed. There's 20 of them. And I tell you all about their background and go way more in depth than you would ever care to know. And today we're focusing on Tyler Batty. You've mentioned his name. He's been around a lot. We've seen him do good things. I want to tell you a little bit about him and why I'm personally a fan, and I have my fingers crossed that he will make this 53-man roster. So he is from Utah originally, played at BYU, but the guy is 26. He's a rookie in the NFL. He's 26 because he's actually Mormon and had to serve in Spain on his mission for 2 years. So he's coming in, and the guy is a full-grown adult. He's a man at this point among boys, and that was very clear at the NFL Combine where he put up numbers. Let me read you some of his stats. He was ranked consistently top 20 in all of his events. So 34-inch vertical jump, 10-foot broad jump, 3-cone drill done in 7.2 seconds. That's 5th overall for defensive ends. And his 40-yard dash was 4.78. This is a big guy too, mind you. He is 6'6", 271. He's an athletic feat, and he's so developed in his body that I think it will actually play very well in the NFL, and it could be a quicker transition for him than others because he genuinely has 2 to 3 years of age on these kids for maturity and development. But not only is he a great athlete, he's also a very good person. He has started in partnership with the Girl Scouts of Utah, a horse therapy company, if you will, called, let me find it, Edward's Hands, started by his dad, which gives free horseback lessons and equine therapy to children in the community, specifically those with special needs. Sounds like a gem of a human being. He started this with some of his teammates and his dad. And it's just like a really cool fun fact that in his free time, he's also helping out in the community, doing this unprompted, not making any money off of it, not doing it for clout. I had to look this up and find it. He's not really promoting it in your face, you know? So I'm a fan of this guy. He seems like the Vikings type, humble, hardworking, athletic. I'd love to see him make the roster.
Well, that's very nice. As an animal appreciator, I think that's great of him to do. He actually had good numbers last year as a pass rusher, 42 pressures on 337 pass rush snaps, and he's been over 30 the last 2 years. The age element for BYU guys is always something that gets brought up. Kyrus Tonga was a guy a couple of years ago that I wrote about and asked him about doing the mission. And that was really interesting to sort of find out what is behind that, what that's like for people to do, and then how you get back into football. And it's a very, I think, interesting process for those guys where a lot of times where I think Kyrus told me was getting out on your own in the real world and not being in the football bubble, that they grow up a lot, usually learn a lot about the world when they do something like that. So that's really cool experience for him. But I'm intrigued because of his height and weight combination with those numbers that you brought up, because when you're talking about somebody that is 6'5", 270 ballpark and can be among the top edge guys in anything, like a lot of the best edge guys these days are more along the lines of 250, 255, and they're running those great numbers and having those high jumps. And I think for the Vikings, most teams are looking at these tweener guys where you're not a defensive tackle, you're not an outside linebacker, or you're not a traditional edge rusher, and saying, I don't know, where does this guy really fit? And Brian Flores has this 3-4 base defense, defensive end types. There's a guy that played for them last year, Jihad Ward, who was kind of the same type of thing, like a 270-pound guy. They just rushed him up the middle on every third down. Flores just has this way of finding places for players who can produce and who have pass rush instincts. I don't know if Batty's going to make the team, but I also do know that there's spots open on this D-line that, you know, Taki Taimani and Levi Drake Rodriguez, Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, I'd throw Batty into that of somebody who is going to have a shot. And I'll tell you, standing next to him, when we're outdoors, we're up on a hill, so we're looking down at everything. When we're indoors, we're right on the sideline. And sometimes the defensive linemen will do drills like right next to us. Let me tell you, none of you could get 2 yards in the NFL without dying, having stood right next to all these defensive linemen doing their drills. But Batty was one that stood out big time to us, watching him right in front of us with the size, 6'5", and then the quickness. What they've done a good job of is they've stacked these young guys with one intriguing trait. Like Gabriel Murphy got brought up, Bo Richter got brought up, Batty's going to get brought up, and they're all going to see who has the trait that helps them emerge and get a chance. And we've already seen that from some guys on this roster. So I am actually intrigued by your UDFA highlight of the week for this year's training camp. Very intrigued.
Thank you. Thank you. I also must say, in talking about the size of the guys when you're seeing them, having worked combine for 2 years now, oh my God, when you are standing next to them, watching them run a 40, it's insane. Or we'll be working with ESPN trying to fit them up for their shoots. So at draft, when they're holding the football and they're posing and they look super swag, the guys are wearing like 3XL. And meanwhile, they just look really normal sitting next to each other. But then I walk up, all 5'9", and I'm like, hi, sir, here's your jacket. And I'm like looking up at a giant. It's crazy. I think we really discount that as viewers of like, no, these are athletes.
There's no way to describe to someone what Danielle Hunter looks like in person. There's just no way. Like, I don't know. However, if you like those Marvel movies, like Thor, but bigger, like, cause he's a lot bigger than that actor who's playing Thor. So just imagine someone larger and that jacked, but probably actually more jacked. Cause I don't think that actor is even as ripped as Danielle Hunter. So, because I remember I was writing a story about how we always focus so much on Danielle Hunter and how he's ripped and not enough on the work it takes to be that way and the technique and everything else. Because there's lots of ripped people who don't become like borderline Hall of Famers like Danielle Hunter. And the first I asked Harrison Smith and I was just like, so what do you think makes, Danielle so successful? He's like, have you seen him? I'm like, I know, I get it. Like other stuff. And he had some really good answers for it, but there's no way to conceptualize that. It's like how big is Karl Anthony Towns or something? And like on the basketball floor, he looks like he's taller than some other people. In real life, that is a mountain of a human being. So yeah. Well, but Tyler Batty, certified big.
Certified big. Someone else who is kind of out of this world and a freak of nature, if you will, Saquon Barkley. Let's talk about his Madden 26 cover that dropped today. So it is him doing his backwards hurdle over, now I'm forgetting the team, but that iconic backwards hurdle, great shot, looks phenomenal on the cover. There was a video that's been doing the rounds on Twitter and Instagram that looks like he's jumping up and just hovering over the guy for like a split second longer than is normal. And everyone's like, there's no way, that's so insane. I don't know if you've seen this. It turns out that's the edited video. The real one is the production staff putting him in a harness. It looks like he's wearing a diaper with strings on it. And he jumps, and then they pull on the strings really hard. He hovers, and then he lands. So I, in my production background, found that really cool to be like, oh, that worked. A little behind-the-scenes magic. Tricked a lot of people.
That's like that video where Tom Brady threw a football into the throwing football machine and it like shot it back out at him. Like, wow, Tom Brady's so accurate. Like, guys, come on, stop. You can't do that. The ball will just, no matter how hard you throw it, it's just going to fly off to the side. It was Jacksonville that he jumped over, and poor Jacksonville gets to be on a Madden cover. It used to be you got posterized, but now I don't even know if there's any other Madden covers where somebody is just getting completely owned. I was trying to look
Not
this
that
up.
I've seen. There's two head-to-head players, but never one where it's a smackdown of sorts.
I can't find any other one where there's another player from a different team who's just getting demolished on a Madden cover. It used to mean a lot to me. I used to play a lot of Madden growing up. It's become a little more difficult these days, not only to find time, but also to figure out how the games work. They've advanced so much.
Matthew, you're aging yourself. Also, if you have time to watch Sex and the City, you have time to play Madden. I'm just saying.
That is a point. But when I do play Madden, I will usually play like the old Maddens because I know how they work. And what I noticed, though, I have an observation, though, about Madden in general, that the internet has softened Madden to where they give everybody good ratings. The last time I went through a Madden was maybe a year or two ago, And I was like, oh, I'm curious, like what Vikings players are rated because I know these guys and everything. And I'm like, there's guys who aren't on the team or are never going to play that have like 70. That seems a little high for me. So I went back and looked at Madden 04, and they used to grade guys so much harsher. Like if you were in the 70s, you were a pretty good player. They used to give guys 40 grades. They never ever do that before. Or they never ever do that now because I think guys would get mad and then they would go to the internet and they would cry about, their ratings and stuff. And then if the player got a 40 rating and then turned out to be good, they'd be like, screw you, Madden, you don't know anything. So I think that I think they've gotten bullied into giving people all these good grades. But unfortunately, I don't think that Madden has put out the best product possible over the last number of years. I think they've kind of got a little bit lazy. It seems like it's the same game every year. So it's not that my wife won't let me play video games, Anthony. I am allowed to play video games, okay?
What have I gotten you into? I will say though, Barkley is the first offensive player in Eagles history to join the exclusive Madden 99 club. So that could be pointing to exactly what you're saying. Is he phenomenal? Absolutely. Is he a 99? He had one really great season. I just feel like that's a little inflated a little too fast.
I do think based on what he did last year, probably belongs with the 99. But is that projecting forward? Is he going to be just as good? That I don't know. If you guys want to throw in the comments, by the way, your favorite Madden cover of all time. I mean, mine is Vic 04 because that is to me the best Madden ever. And the cover is just so iconic. I feel like that's the one that it really peaked with 04. I don't know if there's been recent ones where there's been as like recognizable as that. Culpepper was on one for the Vikings. I think he must have
2002.
been the last. Yeah, I think he was the last Viking. And of course, there's the Peyton Hillis.
Yeah,
the
so you're hitting all the guys. You're talking about the cover curse right now, Matt. This is Dante Culpepper, Michael Vick, Peyton Hillis, Christian McCaffrey. All made the cover and then all fell off or got horribly injured, or in Michael Vick's case, got arrested.
At least it took a couple years before
it took
Dante
4 years,
Culpepper.
but I'm just saying, he fractured his tibia less than a week after the game was released. So I don't know. Maybe there's a curse. Tough. I hope for Saquon's benefit, there is no curse. He doesn't get caught with this. But
you know what the curse is. Also, I think was Christian McCaffrey the one last year?
Yeah, and then Achilles and knee. So
I mean, what it really is just luck, right? Regression and luck. If someone has a huge, amazing year and they're a running back, there's a decent chance that the next year it's not as good and that injuries will come for them. Or in Peyton Hillis's case, I think that Hillis got into like a contract dispute with Cleveland and they just didn't care. And then he signed somewhere else and did nothing the rest of his career. But that was funny. I think that was based on a fan vote. Wasn't that kind of a joke?
Yeah, it was a fan vote that he won. And then the next game, I have here that he missed time with a hamstring injury and a sprained hip, valid. And then he had strep throat. Poor guy. And he just packed it up.
Strep throat's terrible.
Yeah, strep throat is bad. 3 touchdowns, though, 577 rushing yards. Less than half of what he put up in 2012.
How about you're so right though about I never really thought through the Madden curse thing, but I mean the fact that Vince Young was on a cover and not too long after that, it did not go super good for him. Antonio Brown got really weird with him after that.
This is real. That's what I'm saying. You can look this up there. This isn't just like a Reddit creepy internet subthread. This is a very legitimate. The NFL.com has an article. ESPN had an article about this. This is a real thing. So guys, would love if in the chat, your opinion, does Saquon hit the curse? Does he not? Does it escape him? Does it even exist? What do you think?
The Vikings kind of need him to. Eddie George in 01 is a sick cover just from the artistry of that. Because the art of these are some of them are really great. The one with Polamalu and Larry Fitzgerald, that one's awesome. Like the head-to-head one you were talking about.
Yeah. Oh, Eddie George as a Titans, I'm in Tennessee right now. I got to like this Eddie George one. That's pretty tough.
So did you grow up Titans? Was that your team or?
Yeah, but I'm like a long-suffering Titans fan because they have been consistently not good. So I think hometown team for sure, but I worked for the Eagles my senior year of college. So that was my team when I worked at the NFL, but you can't choose a favorite child. So you just have to say, I like them all equally. But if you gun to my head, asked me, it would have been the Philadelphia Eagles. Go Birds. Not anymore. It's the Vikings. Skol.
I was going to say, that's not what anybody wants to hear. Although the previous intern, Clay, was a Bears fan. So we work around it. Yeah, no, that's true. Brady, I mean, it doesn't apply to every single person, but it's remarkable how many of these did not go well. Like, how much longer did Kelvin Johnson even play after he was on the cover? He retired like shortly after that, right?
I don't know if I have that one pulled up, but there was a number of them who just, injury or otherwise, completely fell off, and in a remarkable way, unfortunately. So my thoughts and prayers are with Saquon that this does not happen to him.
Well, we'll see. But if he doesn't play against the Vikings in week 7 because of some curse, then that will be helpful.
We'll come back to this pod for sure.
R.I.P. Clay. He's still alive. He started a Substack. By the way, he started a Substack. Clay Petrie. Go find it. He is writing somewhat about the Bears, but he also ranked his favorite receivers in the league. So make sure you go check that out. All right. We got anything else? What else we got? Anything?
That's all I got for you right now. I think there's a lot going on in OTAs. There's a lot, and there's also not a lot at all. So I'll be back next week. We can break down more things. If you want me to break down the punt returners, so be it. I can get into the punt returners. Oscar Chapman could be undrafted underdog of the week.
Punters,
excuse me.
But there's also a punt returning competition, though. So
yes.
That could have applied either way.
I was mixing things up in my brain.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to work through that. But no, great stuff. And we will definitely have a fun time next week, because only God knows what other OTA reports could end up coming out before then, or what you'll come up with for the next undrafted free agent. We'll have to talk with Tyler Batty about his horses.
Absolutely.
So
until next time, guys, football, baby.
Oh, there you go. Good job. Thanks, Maggie. And thank you all for participating and having a good time with the chat tonight. We'll be back on Thursday night with the live chat, but a lot more to come this week with coverage and guests and all those sort of things. Yeah, Mondays with Maggie is what we're rolling with right now, because none of you could come up with a good enough name. So you're going to have to keep working on that. But thank you all for your time, and we'll talk again very soon. Football.